Cunning indeed, ADL. An anti-defamation league that commits defamation.
This is from the July 30th, 2002 Jail News Journal. Jail is an organization that fights to ensure the accountability of our judges, and one of many organizations that has been tarred by the Anti-Defamation League. The ADL is presented to the American public as experts on extremism as well as hate. Yet after smearing participants of the Homeland Security Expo as extremists, the ADL's director of fact-finding, Mark Piktovich, revealed,
"I don't know that the ADL has a formal definition for the term extremist."
Gun owners, true American patriots, survivalists, all the participants in an event the ADL considers outside of the mainstream are labeled extremist by an organization that doesn't even have, quote, a formal definition, close quote, of this pejorative. Carl Perlston eventually had enough of the hypocrisy and left after 25 years of service. Mr. Perlston recounts how, on one occasion,
I once cited the comprehensive study by Yale University Law School's Dr. John Lott on gun laws to the effect that in those states where people could legally carry concealed weapons, crimes against people actually declined, since criminals do not want to take a chance that their victims may be armed. I was met with a sarcastic and dismissive response that only John Lott, Larry Elder, and you believe in that study. When Dennis Prager participated by invitation in a panel discussion on church-state issues, some members actually hissed and booed his remarks in a hostile display of intolerance. A respected board member persistently repeated to all who would hear that Prager was insane. When I expressed my views on some of these matters in various letters and articles in which I was not identified as an ADL board member, I was rebuked in a stern letter from our president advising that I had publicly taken positions contrary to ADL policy, which was not permitted. I had not realized that, as a price of board membership, I had given up my freedom of speech on issues on which the ADL had taken a position. This was much like the old Leninist doctrine of democratic centralism, in which debate is allowed only before a policy is adopted, and no dissent is tolerated thereafter. It seems odd that an organization which boastfully espouses and teaches tolerance and diversity will not tolerate a bit of dissent and diverse viewpoint in its own lay leadership.
Carl Perlston witnessed the smears and censorship tactics firsthand. He has also quoted syndicated columnist Mona Sharon, who wrote,
"The ADL has committed defamation. There is no other conclusion to be reached after reading its new report, The Religious Right, The Assault, Intolerance, and Pluralism in America. It is sad that an organization with a proud history of fairness should have descended to this kind of character assassination and name-calling."
Witness the ADL's report, The Religious Right, The Assault on Tolerance and Pluralism in America. The Christian Coalition broke down the, quote, shoddy research, close quote, in their article, How the Anti-Defamation League Systematically Smears Conservative Christians.
On June 9, 1994, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, an organization created to fight defamation, released a report that alleges, with shoddy research and threadbare scholarship, that politically active people of faith pose a threat to the survival of American constitutional democracy. The ADL accuses numerous religious conservative organizations and leaders of anti-Semitism and bigotry. In so doing, the ADL itself has committed defamation. The ADL's new definition of intolerance apparently is in disagreement with its liberal politics. The ADL claims its report was the culmination of 9 months of research, but it bears none of the signs of a serious research report. It is virtually devoid of specific references to resource materials. The reader is left to simply take it on faith that the ADL's most damning charges are true, which they are not. In fact, much of the ADL's report is simply a retread of materials, some over a decade old, from groups like People for the American Way, Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, the Institute for First Amendment Studies, and other groups that long have had political axes to grind against religious conservatives. Most disturbing, the ADL never contacted the Christian Coalition to get its response to their unfounded charges, nor did the ADL try to ascertain the accuracy of many of the quotations used in their report. Instead, the report is filled with gross inaccuracies of fact. Quotations are listed without attribution, while others are listed, incredibly, as coming from the Library of People for the American Way. A quotation from Pat Robertson on church-state separation has no source listed at all. Of 28 quotations attributed to Paul Weyrich, founder of the Washington-based Free Congress Foundation, 22 have no source for the quote. One of the most disturbing aspects of the ADL's report is its propensity to lift words out of context so as to distort their original meaning. It does so with reference to the irresponsible charge of anti-Semitism. The ADL has displayed neither tolerance nor respect. Instead, it is engaged in a partisan campaign of innuendo, half-truths, and outright falsehoods.
In the 1960s, the ADL published reports and later a book entitled Christian Beliefs and Anti-Semitism, which led to the Vatican Council repudiating important parts of their own Bible.
The Vatican Council adopted its statement on the Jews, repudiating Jewish guilt in the death of Jesus and denouncing, quote, hatred, persecutions, displays of anti-Semitism directed against Jews at any time by anyone, close quote.
In Matthew 27:25 it states quite clearly, quote, His blood be on us and on our children, close quote. His refers to Jesus, and us and our children refers to Jews. Thus the Vatican Council chose the demands of the ADL over its own religion. Some of the victims of ADL smears actually fight back, not just via writing, but in court as well. William and Dorothy Quigley were two victims of an ADL smear campaign, and they decided to fight back. In 1994, the Quigleys began having neighborly disputes with Mitchell and Candace Aronson, a Jewish couple. The Aronsons got the ADL involved, alleging that the Quigleys, quote, were plotting to drive them out of the neighborhood because they were Jewish, close quote, based on some comments they illegally recorded the Quigleys saying on their cordless phone. The ADL consulted with the district attorney and advised the Aronsons to continue the illegal recordings for another 6 weeks. In December of that year, the Aronsons filed charges against the Quigleys, and the ADL immediately began its smear campaign. The case unraveled quickly, and was eventually dropped. The Quigleys then went after the ADL and won one of the largest defamation awards ever in Colorado, more than $10 million. U.S. District Judge Edward Nottingham wrote on March 31st in a 46-page order and memorandum of decision obtained by the Forward, an English version of the Yiddish newspaper from New York.
Based on its position in history as a well-respected civil rights institution, it is not unreasonable to infer that public charges of anti-Semitism leveled by the ADL will be taken seriously and assumed by many to be true without question. In that respect, the ADL is in a unique position of being able to cause substantial harm to individuals when it lends its backing to allegations of anti-Semitism. The large damage award will, at a minimum, provide a deterrent effect against the ADL from engaging in future conduct involving the use of intercepted telephone conversations to pursue a civil lawsuit against persons perceived to be anti-Semitic.